Jeff, do you remember back to last Friday?
I do. I have very clear memory of last Friday, actually.
Like it was minutes ago, even.
Even it's amazing.
Let's
Uh,
today we're gonna combine some different elements from our uh, prior shows. Remember, we talked about dog fooding. Dog fooding was when a particular group, employees, or a CEO is put in a situation where they have to experience the product or services that their company produces. Okay. And then we were talking more recently about org design. What is org design, and do we have a deficit of skills within HR, particularly among uh, chief human resource officers, in terms of their knowledge of what redesign is and how to actually do it well? We talked about that last week, but today we're combining that. I'm going to pose a question to tee this up, which is HR designed to design an organization? Does the structure within HR itself allow it to have the kind of impact that it needs for the organization? What are your thoughts, good sir?
so it's HR designed to be it's HR well designed for
For org design.
org design. Uh, it's HR or design for org design. So I would say no. Because if we're talking about dog fooding, I don't think HR has been eating its own dog food with regard to org design. So it's a very loud advocate for org design, like it will, but it itself is exempt from really following its own
Mhm.
principles for it. And so I don't think it can really be credible in advocating and producing org design if it itself is not a role model for it. If you are not living it and doing it, then how can
Mhm.
you really establish it for the rest of the organization? So
Well, let me interrupt you just as a callback again. We were talking about professional service firms and their extremely complicated org structures. It goes beyond matrix. It's like matrix on a matrix, right? And we determined, well, that makes a lot of sense because what they need to do is pull in the expertise and the skills in order for accomplishing a particular project, and then they need to go back and then continue on. HR departments don't really have that complexity. Is that your sense? Would you agree with that?
I I mean the HR does not pull in well from others. Like I think they do have that complexity in the sense that they should be taking in from all parts of the organization because they touch all parts of the organization, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't take advantage of that. I don't think they really work the way that you just described. In fact, I mean, we haven't even talked about this, but that's a really kind of awesome model that you just described, where HR touches everyone in the organization. It is a reflection of every aspect of what we're doing, and yet it acts in its own little bubble, right? And
Mm.
so why isn't it really bringing in those expertise of every function or every aspect of the organization as it's working with them? If we're doing good design work, you think about good human centered design, what do? You bring those elements in, you talk to those people, you bring them in. HR doesn't necessarily do that. So that's an indication that they're kind of frozen themselves out of good design as a result.
Do you think? Well, I'll share it now. I was going to let you run with your thoughts and interject this later, but if you'd like, you know how you run with your thoughts. You. Sometimes other people
Such a
aren't running.
compliment runs on my thoughts. Yeah.
I don't want a penny for your thoughts. Anyway, here's where my mind was going. Let me defend HR for a second. Of course, HR isn't designed to create a skill based org structure, to be agile, to adjust to a certain situation, and then 6 months later adjust to something else, or even less than 6 months later, right? Because professional services firms don't also have to be in charge of compensation for a particular client, and law, employment law, and a variety of other compliance measures, and oh god, health insurance benefits packages like that. So all of those things need to be sort of kind of a pipeline, right? There's always going to be a flow of information through the pipeline, but that pipeline doesn't change. That is about as not malleable as you could want from a particular function. Like we always have to do that. We always need it. So to say to that same group of people, we want you to be like a PwC or a Deloitte or a Spencer Stewart. We want you to be super flexible and agile. Of course they can't do that. We're demanding too much. And they're probably, I would say, one of the least staffed areas, right? So my gosh, they're just not in a situation where they can do stuff. It's not their fault. No.
Well, I mean, what you're advocating is just to return back to a model of HR that is truly tactical and functional and not really strategic or advisory driven, right? And that's been the tension.
Or the split of the two, right?
Right. So I think the tension has been to bring in that advisory and strategic HR into the model. So you're absolutely right that those functional aspects are always going to be there, just like you're always going to have tax advisory services in a PwC that is a very specialized element. That's always going to be there, right? So the difference is, and they are understaffed too. I don't want to like just pile on HR, but it's like, but part of the challenge is how are you creating value for the organization if you're freezing yourself out? How are you creating value if you aren't showing that you can be agile and meet the needs of unique situations as they arise or before they arise, because you are flexing your talent or the talent of the organization in a way that allow you to do that and to be thinking differently in the way that you're structured and set up. And so, we're not now talking about, HR doing org design, right? For the, but it's HR thinking about how it can be more agile, more flexible, more responsive in the organization. Like, what does it do differently? And I think it has really gotten really attached to its boxes. I mean, if you really look at if I were to really say what is foundationally wrong with HR, it is still really attached to its box design. I think it's still very conventional in the structure, and
meaning, sorry, just to clarify, meaning we got benefits people, we got training people,
and one of the things, and these are very hard to break down to silos. There is not a lot of great cross pollination in how these groups work together. In fact, I know you probably have had the same experience I've had where you go in and you are looking at some discovery and you're trying to get things joined up across HR, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, this group is doing this and this group is doing that and this group is doing that, and it's really a war even to just get them all to come to the table and realize like you're all working on the same thing. So HR need to get out of its boxes and realize maybe stop being a group of functions and just be HR, just be this more fluid organization. And maybe you can stop thinking about payroll and training and thinking about it's the services and thinking about the advisory and the strategy and how do those three streams really work together. Maybe think about HR as if it were a professional services firm, and how would you structure and how people work that way.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to tee up for you, Jeff. So it's almost like, hey, we want you, Chief HR Officer, to build up the organization's readiness and agility and design. So we need you to lead our org design. And your first project is to get yourself organized and redesigned to be what I just said I need from you. So it is a meta org design in the sense that you're saying if our goal is to be really good at guiding the organization through when it needs to do what for what purpose and how does it pull out of that as quickly as possible to reform in some other way. Great. How do we do that in HR? How, I mean, I know you've got 3 minutes to answer this question, Jeff. How would someone in HR do that?
So magic.
If there was a paywall on our podcast, it would end right now. To hear more about Jeff Jolton solving HR's problems.
Exactly. Well, I think very, really quickly, I think is to break out and think that HR is all about authority and really kind of thinking about where it needs to put its focus on trust and relevance, right? So into like we are the masters of payroll and training and whatever, which is an authority model. It's like, what do we need to be doing in terms of creating relevance for the organization? So how do we expand skill, or how do we create trust and confidence that we're building skills for the future, right? It's to change the thinking about what we're doing and framing maybe differently why we're doing what we're doing. Because if you, maybe I said it last week, I can't remember, but design is about the how and why, not the what as much. So it's why are we doing what we're doing? How, and then the structure and all that. We get to the what later, right? Exactly the mechanism. So I think that's one way of doing it. And then rethinking like, well, how do we use then the talent to fill that in? What's the flow? Like again, like I if we didn't have HR the way it exists right now, imagine it didn't exist at all. And here's the list of all the needs that we do have for our people and we do have for our organization and the goals. Like, what would you do for that? Well, how would you build that out? And to just really try to do the reimagining. And some things might come out, start to look the same, but I think you would also find that new things would start to emerge, and some things would be delegated to AI, some things might be outsourced, and some things would be like, okay, like we can do this in a more fluid and higher value way.
I gave the gong dude a raise.
Bruh.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying, and of course, I know we're not the first ones to tackle this problem, But in my head, I'm like, boy, I would love to have us continue and maybe work with some good friends of ours to put together exactly what we just said, right? Designing HR to be the designers of your modern self, the modern organization that you need to be. That would be spectacular. Maybe we've got to get some friends to work with us in that.
We need some friends, is what you're saying.
We need friends for lots of reasons.
Well, on that, maybe I'll go start looking for some friends this weekend, and wish you and everyone listening, watching a great weekend as well. And thank you for watching.
I can't say it better than that. Thanks, everyone. Design a great weekend. Oh!